Boker Tov, Shabbat Shalom, good morning. Our subject today is the Taharah of the Miqdash, the purifying or the cleansing of the sanctuary. We want to look at that subject this morning. And as I read through the Word of Yah, increasingly I come to the conclusion that prophecy is really choreography, in that words spoken anciently by Yah are now coming into fulfillment, and we're seeing them being displayed in the political, in the religious, and in the social theaters of our world. Things that were spoken years ago are now playing out. And so we see prophecy gliding through time with balletic grace, like a ballerina. We see them fulfilling their appointed times, and people are playing their part in the fulfillment of them, whether for good or for evil. So this morning I want you to turn with me to the book of Maqqabim. The English said it's Maccabees, and we're going to take chapter 1. And the reason for that is that we're in the season of Hanukkah, or the season of light. Today being the 13th day of December, so the Gregorian says, but on the Hebrew calendar, it is the 23rd of Kislev, meaning that 2 days from today would be the day in history when the Yawanites, the Greek, had placed an idol on the altar in the temple in Jerusalem, and the Maccabees, led by their brother Judah or Yehuda, took offense to it and fought against the Greeks and overcame them. And so traditionally they celebrate this period of time every year because it is said that they lit a lamp, a candle, that only had oil for one night, and it burned for 8 nights straight. So we want to look at that in time and examine not only the physical cleansing of the temple, but even more so the spiritual application of that and how it relates to us in our time. Because we have come to understand that truth must always be logically consistent, and it must be verifiable and also existentially relevant to the times in which we live. So turn with me to the first portion of the book of Maccabim, and we will take verse 36. Then Yehuda and his brothers said, "See, our enemies are defeated. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the Miqdash." Let us go and cleanse and dedicate the temple. After this, all the army assembled themselves together and went up to Mount Zion. And when they saw the Miqdash desolate, and the altar profaned, and the gates burned, and shrubs growing in the courts, as in a forest or in one of the mountains, and also the rooms of the Kohanim pulled down, they tore their garments and made a great lamentation and threw ashes on their heads and fell down flat to the ground on their faces and blew an alarm with the trumpets and cried towards the Shemaim. They cried towards the heavens, and they cried because the sanctuary had been desecrated. Now, the question must be asked, therefore, today, when we see the desecration of the temples, how do we respond? Do we ever respond? We see things coming into Yah's house in the places of worship, and silence seems to be the currency we do business with. We just keep quiet and we say nothing. There is no resistance of evil anymore because we're asked to be tolerant. But Yehuda here with his brothers, they saw that this was too much and they rebelled against the desecration of the temple and fought against the Greeks and overcame them. So I'm going to ask you now to come with me to the book of Corinthians, and we are going to take a few verses in chapter 3, starting at verse 16. That's 1 Corinthians 16, verse. Do you not know that you are the Mishkan of Elohim, and that the Ruach of Elohim dwells in you? If anyone destroys the Mishkan of Elohim, Elohim shall destroy him. For the Mishkan of Elohim is Kodesh, it's holy. Which are you? And so the Apostle Shaul here writes as if ignorance had set in. Do you not know, he asks the question, that you are the Mishkan? You are the temple of Yah. Did you not know? Had you forgotten? Or were you so careless, prodigal with your thoughts? Did you not know that your body is the temple where the Ruach lives? And the implication of that is that if your body is the temple, and it is, then you ought to be mindful of how you conduct yourself and how you treat that body where the Ruach lives. We will come back to that, but I think it's important if you understand the physical desecration, then perhaps we will learn the lesson that applies to us in the spiritual realm. Come with me to Maccabee chapter 1. The book of Maccabee chapter 1. And the word says, and it came to be after Alexander, son of Philippos, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, had smitten Darius, sovereign of Paris and Madai, that's Medes and Persian, that he reigned in his place first over Yawan, that's Greek. And he fought many battles and won many strongholds and slew the sovereigns of the earth. And he went through to the ends of the earth and took spoils from many nations, so that the earth was at rest before him. Therefore he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. That's Alexander the Great, this son of Philippus, or Philip the Macedonian. History tells us this was a great man, and I'm reading from the book of Maccabees simply because this portion of time historically is not in your ordinary King James Bible, because when we read in the King James Bible and we get to Malachi, the last book of the Old Testament, we see that Persia is in rule. And as we turn and flick over to the book of Matthew, we see that Rome is in rule. So 400 years have elapsed unaccounted for. And so we have the book of Maccabee here to address that 400 missing year, and that's what we're dealing with here this morning. And so Greek here is at that time ruling. So stay with me. It says, and he gathered verse 4, a very mighty army, and ruled over countries and nations and sovereigns, who became tributary to him. And after these events he fell sick and perceived that he would die. So he called his servants, who were honorable to him, and he divided his reign while he was still alive. So Alexandros reigned 12 years, and then he died. And we know his 4 generals took positions and split up the empire among themselves. We know historically that Ptolemy took Egypt and the adjacent country to Egypt. We know that Seleucus was given Syria and Asia Minor. That means today's Turkey, or the land space of Turkey, comes under this. And I mention that because as we read on, you will see that in the end time, particularly in Revelation chapter 13, 2 of these empires are going to figure significantly in the end time, being Egypt and Syria, the king of the north and the king of the south. And so we also see Lysimachus became sovereign of Thrace and the contiguous areas there. And Cassander received Macedonia and Greece. So that's how the Greek Empire was divided among 4 generals. But I want you to join me at verse 10. It says, after Alexander died and the 4 generals divided the empire, a wicked root came out from them, Antiochus, also called Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the sovereign, who had been a hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the reign of the Yawanites of the Greeks. Now, let's hold it there. Because I asked myself as I was reading this, Antiochus, he said, he was a hostage in Rome. And I'm asking, what is he doing in Rome? And history tells us that his father, Antiochus III, lost the Seleucid Empire to Rome. And as a consequence of losing the empire, Rome stipulated that they had to pay tributaries to them. But to ensure that Greece would pay Rome the tributary, Rome demanded to have heirs as collateral. So Rome asked for heirs to become collateral to ensure the payment. And that's why this Antiochus Epiphanes IV here was in Rome. But now, after a few years, I think it was 175, he was exchanged for his nephew. And his nephew came in his place, and he came back home now, and he's ruling this wicked root, the Bible calls him. So that's the history of that. And as I read this, and perhaps you too, my eyes detect undulations. They do. And my ears, my tympanic membrane receive the vibrations. My eyes, as I look to the scripture, they trigger the eardrum. And that's why the scriptures always say, if he who has an ear to hear, let him hear. Because there is an intimate relationship between the eyes and the ears. So this wicked man, the word says in verse 11, in those days, wicked men went out of Israel and persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the Gentiles. Did you hear that? Let's go and make a covenant with the Gentiles that are around about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. We have not prospered, they said. So this plan was well pleasing to them. Then some of the people were so bold in this that they went to the sovereign who gave them authority to do according to the laws of the Gentiles. Remember, Israel collectively were a people set apart for holy use. They were Yah's chosen vessel, as we are today. And they said, let's join with the heathens. Let's join with the Gentiles, those who don't believe, and let's use their laws and forget ours. And perhaps that's what is happening today as you see the world move smoothly into the assemblies. You just have to listen to the pastors and the music. Clearly, many of the pastors, they answer the call of the church to be a pastor. But many of the same ones do not meet the criteria set by the Bible. They don't. And so this wicked Antiochus here decided that power was his game. And he was going to, if you like, colonize Israel and change their laws, which he did. Verse 14, so they built a place of training in Jerusalem according to the customs of the Gentiles and made themselves as uncircumcised. and forsook the Kodesh covenant and joined themselves to the Gentiles and were sold to do evil. Now, when the reign of Antiochus was established, he thought to reign over Mitzrayim. He wanted to reign over Egypt as well. You could see that this greed for power has not changed in all the years. People are still trying to colonize each other's country and to annex them to their own country and to claim that it is theirs. Wherever you go, this Greco-Roman situation here is still in play in your politics and even in your church. It's happening. That's why I said prophecy is choreography. It's planned. And so when you see men going around signing treaty and saying, this is a peace plan, don't look at the signatures of men, look at the signs of the times. Because the word says when they signed these treaties and said peace is coming, these are prerequisite for destruction. When they say peace and peace is coming, it is sudden destruction upon them. And so when we read the history that took place yesterday, we will understand more significantly that which is to unfold in the times in which we live. The word says that this man coerced the people to break their covenant with Yah. And the people seemingly were willing to do so. And verse 21 says, and he entered proudly. We spoke this morning in Sabbath school about pride and Satan or Lucifer, and how Lucifer was full of pride. We also said that his name is not really Lucifer, that's Latin. His name is El Ben Shaphat. So when we say Lucifer, we're really not calling him by his name. His name is El Ben Shaphat. And that means the morning star or the light bringer. That's what he is. And if we go back into the harmonic orchestral sound of Eden, where innocence was at play, and we listen to that violin note that Eve played, we realized that the acoustic, something was wrong. It was a play in dissonance. Eve played a discordant note of curiosity, the resonance of which caused the whole creation symphony to start playing out of tune. The word says the conductor who inveigled the symphony to change its notational play was none other than El Ben Shaphat, Lucifer. He was more subtle than all the animals in the garden. And so we see him here at play again years later, inveigling the people of Israel to break with their covenant. That's what he does. And there is no need for him to change his method or his tactic, because they've always worked, because people are generally weak, relying on their strength. And so the word says he came proudly into the Miqdash, into the temple, and took away the golden altar and the lampstand of light and all the utensils and the table. So you know where he's at. He's in the holy place here. He went in boldly. This is Yah's house. And so the bowls of pouring and the vessels, the gold, the fire holders, and the veil, and the crown, and the golden ornaments that were before the echo, all which he pulled off. He also took the silver and the gold and the precious vessels. He also took the hidden treasures which he found. Can you imagine that? Now, but I have to ask myself a question. Because exactly what he did here was what Nebuchadnezzar had done. And so the question is no longer about these men. It is what is happening in Yah's house. Nebuchadnezzar took the vessels and took them to Babylon. And several years later, the same thing is happening again. Solomon's temple was later destroyed. And in 70 AD, Zerubbabel's temple and then Herod's temple destroyed. The temple at Shiloh was also destroyed. Why? Because the temple was not clean. Was not clean. And perhaps you think I'm thinking of the physical temple. No. Yah cares more about the temple, as we read in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 16 and 17, the physical people, than he does the bricks and the mortar. Yah was not allowing the temples to be destroyed because the bricks were not clean, but because the people were not clean. Their soul temples were not cleansed. And so each Sabbath morning or Sunday morning, whenever your choice of day has been to go to the assembly, and you look on that great edifice of yours and the great many people sitting in those pews, ask yourself the question, is the temple clean? Is it clean? Because know this, based on the question that Shaul asked in 1 Corinthians chapter 3. Do you not know that you are the Miqdash, you're the sanctuary, and the Ruach dwells in you? So if your Miqdash, your sanctuary, is unclean, it doesn't matter how clean the physical bricks and mortar are, you have defiled the temple. You have defiled the church. The church is in the congregation, but the congregation is not the church. So when you say you're going to church, you've misunderstood. No, you are the church. So each Sabbath morning, you congregate with other churches. And so each of us is a church, a temple, a sanctuary. And so when we're not clean, then we defile the whole place. And so the place is destroyed. And so the word says that later on, this man here, he placed an image of Zeus on the altar and sacrificed idols. It says in verse 54, now on the 15th day of the month of Kislev, in the 145th year, they put up the abomination of desolation upon the altar and built altars throughout the cities of Yehuda on every side, and burn incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And when they had torn in pieces the books of the law, they burned them with fire. Verse 59, come with me there. Now on the 25th day of the month, remember I said earlier that today is the 23rd of Kislev. It says they slaughtered on the idol altar, which was upon the altar of Elohim, at which time, according to the command, they put to death some women that had allowed their children to be circumcised. So I've gone this way to make a simple point. The 25th of Kislev usually is the same day as the 25th of December, which many call Christmas, Christ's Mass. And this was the day that an idol was placed on the altar. And this scene here has changed hands many times. And people, if you look in their gardens, on their houses, inside of their houses, they are decking their houses with pine trees and lights, misunderstanding what the season of light is. And so I'm going to ask you to join me in the book of Ezekiel. In the English, they say Ezekiel. And if you join me at chapter 8. And it came to be in the 6th year of the 6th month, on the 5th of the month, as I sat in my house with the elders of Yehuda, sitting before me, that the hand of Adon Yahweh fell upon me, and I looked and saw a likeness like the appearance of fire. From his waist and downwards, the appearance was like fire, and from his waist and upward, the appearance of brightness like glowing metal. And he stretched out the form of a hand and took me by the lock of the hair. Now, last week we looked at Samson, who had 7 strands of locks. And here we see again Ezekiel seems to be a locksman. And the Ruach lifted me between the earth and the Shemahim, and brought me in visions of Elohim to Jerusalem, to the door of the north gate of the inner court. So remember, Nebuchadnezzar had besieged Jerusalem, and he did it in 3 phases. 605, he took away Daniel and his friends, the 3 Hebrew boys. 597, he came back, and he took away people like Ezekiel. And in 586, he destroyed the temple completely. So it was done in measured phases, and the whole thing was destroyed. Why? Because the temple was unclean. And so Yah now has gone to Babylon, where Ezekiel is, hold him by the lock of his hair and take him back to the temple and show him what was happening in the temple. He says, and he said to me, Son of man, please lift your eyes. Remember I said the eyes, they have an intimate relationship with the ears because the ears, they detect vibration, these sound waves. As soon as the eye looks at it, you'll hear tingle. Cast your eyes, he said, and look. And I lifted my eyes northward, and north of the altar gate I saw the image of jealousy in the entrance. And he said to me, Son of man, do you see what they are doing, the great abomination which the house of Israel are doing here, driving me away from my Miqdash? This is my house. But the things that the people are doing is causing me to leave. It's not the bricks. It's not the church, the physical building. It's the conduct of the people that is driving me away. What would he say today? The way people dress, or undress, I should say. The way the women attend assemblies, they're praying and they're fasting with their heads uncovered, even though Apostle Shaul says they ought to do it because the angels, they veil their faces before Yah, but the women, they come bare heads. What would he say? So Ezekiel here is seeing the things that cause Yah to leave and the spirit leave. And chapter 10 of Ezekiel tells us that the Ruach went up onto the threshold and left the temple. Verse 7, then he brought me to the door of the court, and I looked and saw a hole in the wall. And he said to me, Son of man, please dig into the wall. And when I dug into the wall, I saw a door. And he said to me, go in and see the evil abomination which they are doing there. And I went in and looked and saw all kind of creeping creatures, abominable beasts, and all idols of the house of Israel, carved all around in the walls. You know, people don't even do graffiti now on buildings. They do it on their skin. We call it tattoo. And they come to church with these tattoos. And nobody says a word because there is no Yehuda. There is no Maccabee family that stands out in the churches today because everybody is silent. And as I indicated, silence is the currency we do transactions with in the churches today. And so Ezekiel here is being given a tour guide around the temple. And these are the things that he has seen. The word says, for they say Yahweh does not see us. Yahweh has forsaken the land. And he said to me, you are to see still greater abomination which they are doing. And he brought me to the door of the north gate of the house of Yahweh, and I saw women sitting there weeping for Tammuz. Did you hear me? I said earlier that on the 25th of Kislev, which is the 25th of December, usually, this was the day that they placed an idol on the altar. And Ezekiel here on the 25th, I presume, the 25th of December, women are weeping for Tammuz. So you ask yourself, who is Tammuz? Well, we're made to understand that Tammuz is the son of Nimrod and Semiramis. And he was the one, it is said, who was born on the 25th of December, or the 25th of Kislev. So when you deck your house and your garden and your houses and your shops and your business, and sometimes the clothes you wear, you are weeping for Tammuz. That's what you're doing. You're weeping for Tammuz. I hear people say, well, I don't believe in it, but I just wear the clothes. I just put that hat on because it's fun. Sin is no fun. It's never been fun. And he found that out when she saw a withered leaf for the first time. And fear crept in. You didn't hear me. I said, when faith disappears, faith arrives. Up until that point in the garden, there was a cordial relationship between Adam and Eve and Yahweh. But as soon as they disobey, when disobedience arrives, fear comes. Oh, I heard a voice, but I was hiding. I was afraid, they said. And that's why the world is so afraid today. Wherever you go, wherever you listen to the news, fear in people's voices. Fear. Because they're disobedient. That's when faith comes. The man who has faith, he's not fearful. At least not as much as those without a faith. And so come with me to Jeremiah chapter 10. So unwittingly, many people today are finding themselves weeping for Tammuz, not knowing that it is the son of Nimrod and Semiramis who was born on the 25th of December. Jeremiah chapter 10. Hear the word which Yahweh spoke to you, O house of Israel. Thus saith Yahweh, do not learn the way of the Gentiles. Do not do that. Do not learn the way of the heathens. And do not be frightened by the signs of the Shemaim. Don't do that. For the Gentiles are frightened by them. See, I said that fear comes at a time of disobedience. For the prescribed custom of these people are worthless. For one cut a tree from the forest, work of the hands of the craftsman with a cutting tool. They adorn it with silver and gold. They fasten it with nails and hammers so that it does not topple. They are like rounded posts, and they do not speak. They have to be carried because they do not walk. Do not be afraid of them, for they do no evil, nor is it in them to do any good. Don't do as the heathens, Yah says. They cut a tree, usually a pine tree, out of the forest, and they deck it with silver, with gold, and sometimes they put stockings on it and tell lies to the children that some man from the North Pole is coming down their chimney. And in Florida, here we don't have chimneys, so I don't know how they expect us to believe that. And all they're doing is weeping for Tammuz. They're weeping for Tammuz. So we need to understand something. We really do. The word says, righteousness exalted a nation, and sin is a reproach to any people. You read that in Mishlei chapter 14 in verse 34. So this prophecy, as I indicated earlier, is a divine choreography in that the messages are communicated through planned Kodash directed movement throughout time. And they reveal Yah's mind, his will, and his design. Yah tells us ahead of time what is going to happen so we can prepare ourselves. Let me explain what I mean by that when I said this thing is choreography. Come with me to Daniel chapter 8, as was read to us by our sister earlier on. It says, in the third year of the reign of Belshazzar, the sovereign of the vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me the first time. And I looked in the vision, and it came to be while I was looking that I was in the citadel of Shushan, which is in the province of Elam. And I looked in the vision, and I was by the river Ulai. And I lifted my eyes and looked and saw a ram standing beside the river, and it had two horns, and the two horns were high, and the one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast could stand before him, and there was no one to deliver from his hand, while he did as he pleased and became great. And I was observing, and I saw a male goat came from the west over the surface of the earth without touching the ground, and the goat had a conspicuous horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had two horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him in the rage of his power. Now understand what's happening here. Let's look at it with some interest. As I indicated, that prophecy is choreography. And the Bible itself is an anthology of history, of different perspectives. And so prophecy is also the anatomy of this anthology. Why am I saying that? Daniel is letting us know that he had a vision. At the time he had the vision, it's clear, this is Belshazzar, Babylon is the premium empire. They were the world leader. They were the America of yesterday, Babylon. But the vision is telling him about two kingdoms not yet come. Media Persia, represented here by the ram with two horns, and Greece, the he-goat, which is what we talked about earlier, Alexander the Great. That's remarkable. So when you understand this, you will see, oh, time and events are choreographed, planned, and different leaders are appointed to fit these events over time. And so when they come and they boast and say they've done this, It was written that it would have been done. They've not done anything great. It's Yah's utterances that are playing out. And so when you read the scripture, you know that, and you just put down their pride as one of ignorance. So Daniel is told, Media Persia, led by Cyrus, is going to come and destroy Babylon. And after that, a he-goat from Yawan, from Greece, is going to come and destroy that dual kingdom, which is the same kingdom we read about in Maccabee 1 earlier on, when the wicked root came up out of them, Antiochus Epiphanes. We've got to understand that. So what is happening here? This is a forerunner of what is to come. Come with me to the book of Revelation as we try to bring this thing to its closure. Revelation chapter 13. Revelation chapter 13 tells us that there is a beast coming out of the sea. And I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads names of blasphemy. This is the forthcoming Antiochus Epiphanes. This is the anti-Messiah, anti-Christ. And the beast I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like a bear. This takes us back to the prophecy of Daniel chapter 2 also. And his mouth like the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power. So this man that is coming, this anti-Messiah, is indwelled with satanic powers. Hillel ben Shaphat is dealing with him. And I saw one of his heads as having been slain to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the earth marveled after this beast. And they worshiped the dragon and gave authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? It's none like him." Instead of running from the beast, they're running to him, saying, "Look at him. This is a beast. Who is able to fight with him?" Did you hear that? Nobody can beat this beast. He's strong, this beast. And he was given a mouth speaking greatness. Wow. And blasphemies. And he was given authority to do so 42 months. That's 3.5 years. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against Yahweh, to blaspheme his name and his tent, and those dwelling in the Shamaim. And it was given to him to fight with the Kodeshim and to overcome them. And authority was given to him over every tribe and tongue and nation. This man is going to be the strongest, this empire. Nobody can beat him. And he's going to cause havoc on the earth. He's going to make the earlier Antiochus Epiphanes look like a choir boy. So I believe that many of the lies you hear being told now in the deceits, the groundwork is being laid for this man of lawlessness. So when he comes, he will be at home. Lawlessness. That's what Revelation said. And verse 11 tells us that another beast come out of the earth. who will cause the whole world to worship this first beast. That's what it says. Let's read it for emphasis. And I saw another beast coming out of the earth, verse 11, and he had two horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. So this earth beast at its initial stage will look like a lamb, sparsely populated piece of land where nobody else had lived previously but a few. But after a while, this beast here will start to speak like a dragon. So all we have to do is to look around the world and hear who is speaking like a dragon, like Satan. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. So we know these are beasts, the Bible calls them, but we know they are kingdoms. So if we look at things historically, according to Yohanan told us in Revelation chapter 17, we know that Egypt was first. And the Assyrian Empire was second. Babylon was third. Media-Persia, fourth. Greece, fifth. Rome, sixth. And John tells us in Revelation 7, he says, when I had this vision in Revelation 2 and 3, he says 5 had already passed. So we had the vision of Revelation 1, 2, and 3 when the sixth empire was in place. That's Rome. So the question you have to ask is, who is the seventh? Who ruled the world after the Roman Empire? Well, we know historically that the Ottoman Empire came into being. That would make it seven. And we also know that Rome split into two parts of the empire. You had the Western Empire after the split, and then you have the Eastern Empire, and the headquarters was in Constantinople, Istanbul, which is today's Turkey, which is where the ark landed. And so we're looking, because in Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39, we see that there's going to be a bloody war. An ally of countries are coming against the land of Israel. And we're told it's going to take 7 months before the dead are buried. So trouble is coming up on the earth. The point I'm making in all of this is that the temple, yes, temple, our personal temple needs cleansing. Not so much the physical temple. Because we are the people. We are the temple and the Ruach that dwell in us. And so we have to conduct ourselves in such ways that we know how to dress. In marriage, we know who to get married to. We can't take these bodies of ours and give it to anybody who have no business seeing them, particularly if they're heathens. Do not yoke yourself with unbelievers. That's what the word says. Because you would defile the sanctuary, your sanctuary. Just think. In today's day, when a young man or a young woman takes a partner who is not of the same cloth as they are, not made of the same clay as they are, and they give themselves intimately while the Ruach dwells in them, how desecrated is that temple? Ask yourself. Now you understand why, in such situation, the Ruach has to leave, even as he left Samson. He left Samson according to Judges 16 and verse 20. Samson, young Samson, was laying with Delilah when the Ruach left him. And he did not know how many men and how many women are in other people's bed, and the Ruach has left them because they have desecrated their own temple and not know it. May we take note of these instructions and make the corrective move to sanctify our own soul temple. For such I ask in Yeshua's name. Amen.